Hi everyone, I'm Lauren from Peas in a Pod, and have you ever spoken to an American and they suddenly add the word gate to the end of their words, and you didn't really understand why they added it and what it meant? So today we're going to be looking at that suffix, and that's going to lead us to scandal, political intrigue, and some historical context for the word. So Bridgegate was a scandal involving a bridge closure in New Jersey and the governor at that time, Chris Christie. And that was very commonly referred to as Bridgegate in the news and when people were discussing it. If you play video games, it's very likely that you've heard of Gamergate, where a female gamer was harassed online by male gamers, and that became a very big scandal in the gaming community, and it got a lot of media attention. And just to prove that Americans really do use gate as a suffix when they're just talking to their friends, during the Super Bowl, I was texting with some friends and I mentioned DEFLATEGATE, which was a scandal involving Tom Brady a few years ago, where he was accused of having known that a football was not as inflated as it was supposed to be. So as you can probably guess from those examples, the suffix gate means scandal. So if you add gate to the word bridge, you're saying something about this bridge is scandalous. If you add gate to the word gamer, you're saying something involving a gamer is scandalous. So how did gate, which just means an opening in a fence, come to mean scandal in American culture? So that's all thanks to the Watergate scandal. So in the early 1970s, 5 men broke into the Democratic National Committee. These offices at that time were held in the Watergate office complex. So that's how Watergate got its name. Now these 5 men were later found and arrested, and when they were arrested, police found money that these men had been paid by the Richard Nixon campaign. So an official part of the Nixon campaign had paid these men money to go and burgle the Democrats' offices. So with this looming conspiracy, Nixon decided to try to cover it up. He abused his position of power as the president, and he used the IRS, the FBI, and the CIA to go after his political opponents and to try to discredit the investigation and insist that he wasn't involved and that he wasn't a criminal. Actually, a very famous line from Nixon is, "I am not a crook." And that's the quote that everyone now associates with Nixon, America's most infamous president. So throughout the course of the investigation, there was a court case between Nixon and the United States, because Nixon was very paranoid and he would record a lot of conversations that took place in his offices. And when investigators found out, they wanted access to those tapes. So they sued to get access, and the tapes ended up proving that Nixon had been abusing power to try to cover up what had happened with Watergate. With all the evidence mounting against Nixon, he knew that he was about to be impeached and thrown out of the office of the president. So he decided to become the first and only president in US history to resign on August 9th, 1974. Now Nixon didn't go to jail. He was actually pardoned by his replacement, President Ford. So why is Watergate so important to Americans? Well, it's important because this scandal had deep impacts on Americans both psychologically and politically.
That doesn't really matter because in the end it all hurts just the same.
So even people who don't understand the details or don't know the details still know those basic universal facts about it simply because references to Watergate and Nixon are everywhere. You see them in comedy routines, TV shows. I'm pretty sure my first exposure to the idea of Nixon and Watergate was in a cartoon that I watched as a kid. So these are things that Americans have just grown up surrounded by. This idea that the presidency isn't this sacred office that it was before Nixon was put into power. A lot of the phrases that you're going to be hearing when you're talking to colleagues or your friends or when you're watching the news or listening to the radio are going to reference things that were popularly said about Nixon and about the Watergate scandal. So I want to go over quickly a few of those phrases just so you're familiar with them. One of them is the cover-up is worse than the crime. And that means the act of hiding evidence or of obstructing justice can be worse than the actual crime. So people can go to jail for hiding the evidence, even if for some reason they wouldn't have been convicted of the crime. Another phrase that you might hear is, what did the president know and when did he know it? And that refers to how much of the scandal did the president have knowledge of beforehand? Was he involved? What role, if any, did he play? So that's a phrase that I've heard a few times in reference to the current scandal, and it's something that I've heard in reference to previous scandals by previous presidents, by governors. It's a phrase that you'll hear a lot whenever someone in power is being accused of being involved in a scandal or having knowledge of a scandal. Well, another way that you can use the suffix gate is you can take a word or a situation that isn't really controversial, but then add gate at the end to make it seem like it's more of a big deal than it is. And that way you can make a joke out of the situation by being a little bit sarcastic with it. And Americans tend to like sarcastic humor, so I would recommend, maybe giving that a try with some of your friends. Okay, everyone, I hope that this episode has helped clear up what it means when people use gate as a suffix, and has also provided you with some historical context to better understand American political culture and the current climate about everything that's going on in America right now. If you found this episode helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel, and be sure to check out our podcast, Peas in a Pod, for more great content to increase your cultural literacy and help you to connect with American friends and colleagues.